Hello, welcome to join the CIMA strategic level exam techniques WebEx sections for the Southeast Asia and Australia region. My name is Samuel Lee. I'm the study support and learning manager from CIMA. I'm also a CIMA member myself. I started my career as an executive trainee with Jelly Matheson in Hong Kong, and that is where I was sponsored to do the CIMA qualifications. I work as a management consultant since 2008 and joined CIMA in 2011. I specialize in the enterprise pillar subjects, which is E1, E2, and E3, and also the final T4 Part B. I'm currently based in Singapore, and I look after the progression for the enterprise pillar globally. So today we're going to look at the strategic level paper. So this is today's a combined section, so no matter which paper you're doing, for the strategic level, you're more than welcome to join the sections. I'm going to go through two questions today. One is a P3 questions and one is a E3 questions. If you're not doing these subjects, it's okay because the approach or the technique involved is pretty much similar for all three subjects anyway. Just on a note, since we'll be going through the questions, it will be good if you have downloaded and printed out the questions already. So for the P3, we are looking at March 2011, P3 questions 2, so that's March 2011, question 2. And for E3, we'll be looking at September 2011, E3, question 1A. So that's September 2011, question 1A. You should have access to the link to these questions already. So if you have not yet download and printed them out, I would suggest you to pause and do it now. In the presentation later, there will be also time I will be asking you to just pause the recording so you can actually read the questions and maybe do a bit of practice yourself before I walk through the questions. So this is what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at the examination format, look at part of the Preseen. I won't go into huge details, but the slide will point to you some of the rationale behind the Preseen and some suggestions on how to prepare for it. We're going to look at some common issues when sitting examination. I'm assuming most of you would have done some CIMA examination or even have tried the strategic level before already. So why some people are not able to pass, what are the common issues causing problem? We're going to look at a lot of time on the exam techniques and how we can mitigate these issues, especially one of the most important one is doing answer walkthrough, which I will do for one for P3 and one for D3 using an ASAP approach. Is an approach suggested by CIMA to help students to tackle long questions. Finally, we look at some other free study resources on the CIMA global website and get a little about the transition into 2015. So this is if you manage to pass all three subjects in the November sitting, or if you need to repeat any of those in 2015, what will be the arrangement for you? So this session will last about an hour to an hour and a half long. So first of all, examination format. If this is your first time to sit the strategic level, I would like to remind you again, you're required to sit all three examinations in the same sitting if this is your first attempt. And you need to be present at all three examinations. Even if you feel not too comfortable about it, do not be absent, because if you're absent for any of the subjects and this is your first sitting, even if you done quite well in the remaining two, but if you're absent for the third one, the result for these sitting, all three subjects will be counted as void. So it's very important that if this is your first sitting, you are present at all three examinations. Examination will take place from the 18th to the 20th of November. Usually it will be in the morning around 9:10, but do check with your admission advice because there could be local variations between different exam center. You will have 3 hours for this examination, and on top of that you have 20 minutes reading time. You only need to get like 50% out of 100 marks to pass, so you do not have to be perfect. And the results will come a little bit earlier this year in December 2014, so for you to plan ahead to move to 2015 syllabus. So for all three papers, the format is the same. You have two sections. Section A worth 50%, and it's a compulsory questions based on the Preseen material, which we're going to look at later together. The Preseen case is common for all three subjects. The question 1 in section A for all three paper will be based on the same Preseen material. You may have up to 4 and something even 6 sub-questions within this question 1, which worth 50 marks. Section B, again, 50%. This is the only time in the CIMA examination that you're going to have a choice. So you will need to choose 2 out of 3 scenario-based long questions in section B. Each question will worth 25 marks. Do not do all 3 questions because that's not required and you're only going to get marks for 2 of them. So do make sure you make your choice very carefully. In my opinion, choosing the right questions in section B can either make you or break you. And sometimes it's only that very, very small difference. So do make a very, very careful and informed choice. We can talk more about this when we talk about the reading time later and how you should be using your reading time. So Preseen case, a bit of a background and rationale for why CIMA has introduced the Preseen case for the strategic level back in 2010. The reason is to reinforce the idea that all 3 pillars, the enterprise, performance, and financial pillars, should be linked together. They should not be looked at in silo. At the end of the day, when you reach up to the final level, which for you, when you move to 2015, will be the strategic level case study, you'll be examined across all 3 pillars anyway. And in your workplace, you're not going to be able to deal with an issue in isolation. So you need to incorporate all you've learned in different areas within the syllabus and bring together to be your knowledge. So having a Preseen case is to reinforce the idea that these 3 subjects are actually in fact linked together. The other reason why we have a Preseen case is simply because we want to ensure no candidate is put at a disadvantage or advantage by the level of familiarity with the industry involved. For example, the current case, the industry is a sweet candy company. So, for example, if you work in one of these fields before, you already know quite a lot already, whereas if your colleagues who have not worked in any of these industries before would find it quite difficult if this is the first time he or she come to see this scenario in the examinations. So the Preseen case is there to provide a foundation, some background, so everyone is on the same page. It gives you a chance to do a little bit of background research if this is something that you're not familiarized with. You're not expect to spend a lot of time for industry research, though. This will be tested in the final paper in for Part B, or in your case would be the strategic level case study. So do not spend a lot of time. Do not get carried away, and between now and examination, spend all the time to Google and do the industry research. Saying so, you still should do some research. My suggestion on how you prepare the Preseen will be 1, do a SWOT analysis. I think that's a must. That's a very good way for you to get a good understanding, grasp of what is the issue facing the company. What is the key issue that we should be looking at? Pay particular attention to any numbers and the financial details which is given to you in your Preseen, and what they tell you about the organization performance and positions. To look at the gearing, look at if they have any debt, look at the cash flow positions, look at their profit. It's also quite useful to comparing your company, why here, with a real life company. So you kind of get a feel of like how big or small you're talking about. Is this a leader in the market or is it a new startup? Again, this will affect how you make recommendations in your examinations. You may want to sort of recognize some of the major issues that could be affecting the organization from different perspectives, from different paper, from the enterprise performance and the finance perspective, and then try to identify related syllabus area and review them in the light of the position and problems of the organizations. Again, don't get too carried away, and no need to to do a lot of speculations. Sometimes as we will see in one of the E3 paper, part of the question may be completely not related to Preseen. It's still based on the same company, but most of the stuff you'll be working with will be given in the unseen on the day of your examinations. So I'm not going to go through in huge details. There's already quite a lot available online already. So do download the Preseen if you have not done so, you need to download yourself from the CIMA Global website. Um, this is actually quite similar, but again, not identical to a real-life company called Thorntons in the UK. So do click on the PDF which you also received with this recording. I've put a lot of links there. So do get a feel of what is the kind of company like. What is their mission statement. What is their sales points. How is their distribution channel. So get a good idea of how company in real life actually operate. There are a lot of free resources by various tuition providers. There's articles from Kaplan on the top 10 possible issues. The PDF format can be downloaded from the CIMA Global website. We will have another one from BBP very soon. I also put in 2 videos here, one from First Intuition and the second one from Astranti. So both of them again operate or based in the UK. They've done some excellent YouTube video that you can watch and will actually give you a very in-depth analysis on the Preseen. In my opinion, this will be quite sufficient for your preparations already. Of course, if you want to do a bit more research on your own or as a group, that's fine. But my suggestion is do not get carried away. Your main focus between now and the examination should still be studying your study text if you have not complete, or more importantly, to practice past exam questions under time conditions. This is the best things you can do between now and your exam day, which is just over 1 month to go. So I'm not going to go through more of the Preseen today. There's quite a lot here, and do go into the link I put in here and go through the materials at your own pace. So look at some of the common issue why when people see the CIMA examinations, why they're not passing, what is stopping them to pass the examinations. I think the number one is unable to finish the paper, especially at this level, at the strategic and even the T4 Part B. A lot of people fail is not because they don't know their syllabus, they don't know their stuff, it's because simply they run out of time. They spend a lot of time on 1 or 2 questions and unable to finish the paper. So time management is very important, and I think this is the number one thing you need to get really good at before going to your examinations. A lot of people, despite this is quite an advanced level in CIMA and they have done some examination already, they do not understand the questions, so they don't understand what examiner is actually asking for. Even if they do understand, they could have the wrong answer approach. Even if they can understand and have the right approach, we also see a lot of students have very poor answer layout, especially if you're doing in your examination by pen and paper. Some people have really poor handwriting and simply cannot be read. Anything cannot be read would not be marked. So you're not going to get penalized for poor handwriting, but they have to be at a minimum be readable. So we're going to spend some time to look at exam techniques to how to mitigate these issues. As I said, time management is the most crucial for the strategic level examinations. You only have 3 hours and you feel really, really pressurized to complete your paper. From my own experience, when I did my strategic level examinations, when I came out of the exam room, I feel that my hand is going to drop off. I feel that my finger is in so much pain that I can't write anymore. And I assure you, this feeling is very common and shared by a lot of other CIMA students. So yes, you will be pressurized, but you're not the only one. If you do not feel that way either, you're a very fast handwriter, or you're not writing enough. So speaking on understanding the questions, we need to understand the verbs the examiner use in the questions, what they actually mean, and how you plan your answer. So on this part, we're going to go through using the ASAP approach, going through 2 questions, one from P3 and one from E3. We're going to look at what I call please the examiner. So how we structure our answer, or how we lay out the answer in a way that is very easy for examiner or marker to give you marks. I've seen people losing up to 5 marks just simply by poor layout. Unfortunately, an examiner has a lot of paper to mark, on average on each subject per sitting, with more than 5,000 papers globally, and that's only being marked by a very small team of markers in the UK. So each marker can be marking something between 100 to 1,000 paper, and you can understand it can be quite tedious job. So they're not going to go in huge distance to dig out whatever marks that you have put in there. Of course, they will read in care, in care, but I think it will be to your advantage to present your answer in a way that is easy for the marker to give you marks. You're telling the marker, where you want him or her to give you marks. The last thing you want to do is to irritate and upset the marker, because that is just not going to work in your favor. So we're going to look at how we please the marker. So number one technique here is time management. If you have taken CIMA examination before, you know that you only need to get 50 marks out of 100 to pass the exam. So that means you have to get 50% correct in examination. You do not have to be perfect. What happens if you miss out 10 marks in the exam? So instead of getting 50 marks out of 100, if you miss 10 marks, then you have not even tried your attempt. That means you have to get 50 marks out of 90s, which you have tried. So that's already increased the percentage of correctness from 50 to 55%. And more so, if you miss out like a whole 25 marks question and more, so you miss out, you only have to get 50 marks out of say 70. That will even push up the percentage of correctness from 50 up all the way to 71. And if I tell you, like on looking at the pass stat, most people pass the strategic level examination in the range between 50 and 60. So if you can get anything above 60 in a strategic level exam paper, you have done really well already. If you get anything above 70s, you could be getting prize, from, if not from the global, you will at least get some prize in your local region. So that it's very difficult to try to get 71% correct in examinations. And I think this just proves my point how important it is to finish the whole exam paper, to increase your chance of passing. Because it's most likely, even if you pass, you'll pass in the range between 50 to 60. So as a general rule, you should spend 1.8 minutes per marks available. That's to calculate. That is very easy because there's 180 minutes, 3 hours for the examination, and it's out of 100, so we just simply divided that. And that means that for 5 marks of questions, you should not spend more than 9 minutes. For 10 marks of questions, it's 80 minutes. So one of the long 25 marks questions, altogether 45 minutes is the maximum time you should spend on that question. And this includes the time of writing, the time of thinking and planning, and actually writing it up. So and if I tell you for usual 10 marks questions, you should be looking to at least write something between 1 A4 size to 1.5 A4 size paper with normal size handwriting, single line. You can see where I'm coming from. There's a lot of writing to be done in a very short period of time. There's only one way to get better at this, and there's no shortcut, I can assure you, is that you have to practice under exam conditions. So do not go in the exam room and hoping that you'll be able to to follow these guidelines for the first time, because you won't be. You have to, during your normal practice, to practice under the exam conditions, under this time limit as well. My suggestion is whenever your time is up, stop and move on to the next questions. Most of the time, you will be getting most of the marks already in the early part of your answer. The last, 5 or 10 seconds could be just squeezing out whatever, else you may be thinking of. So it's best to move on. You can always leave some space and come back to complete it if you do have time at the end of the examinations. But it will it will put you in a much better position if you have tried all the questions, attempt all the questions as much as possible, rather than hoping that if you do well in 1 or 2, that can compensate for missing out the third question. It won't work that way. I've seen a lot of people try that approach and fail. So again, speaking from someone who has done it myself, it's best to finish the whole exam paper. Because we only got 3 hours for the exam, so the extra minutes, the extra 20 minutes reading time is crucial. Unfortunately, we have seen examiners making comment there's little evidence that students are optimizing the reading time in order to score more marks. So that is quite disappointing to see these kind of comments, coming back again and again. So these are some of the to-dos and don'ts during the 20 minutes reading time. Read the question requirement first. I know there's a temptation that to go into the scenario. Yes, you can have a lot of that during your strategic level examination, but do not get dive into that right away. Do look at the question first. Usually the scenario is going to be structured in a way that the top part of the first paragraph would relate to sub-question A, and the second part will be related to sub-questions B. So, already by looking at the question, you kind of know, what is the structure of the scenario. It helps you to, to see the overall picture. Again, it's always a lot easier to, to find the relevant information if you know what the examiner is looking for. So always read the question requirement first. Don't just read one part, read the whole part of the sections. This is particularly important when you go to choose your questions in section B. Some people, again, they make a mistake. They saw the first part, oh, so difficult, let's skip these questions. Or first part, yay, there's something and then you dive into. But what makes you find, oh, you can do the first 5 marks, but the remaining 20 marks, you have absolutely no idea. So, after wasting some time to write the answer, you have to abandon that question and start on another one, which is not a good approach. You waste a lot of time already, and time is very precious. So do read the whole set of the questions. So you understand where examiner is going, you understand the thinking, and secondly, you're going to make informed decisions. Sometimes the first part of the question can be tricky, but then the remaining part can actually be quite straightforward. So you have to really evaluate and see what may work best for you. You're allowed to actually write during the reading time on your question booklet, not in the answer booklet though, but in the question booklet. So bring your pencil, bring your highlighter, annotate or highlight the question paper, and also use the 20 minutes to really read section B and decide which question to do and what order to do. You do not have to do all your questions in the same order that is being presented in the exam. So that means you can do question 2 first if you want to, and then go to question 3 and then come back to question 1. It's possible. I would suggest you to start with the questions that you feel comfortable. Usually there will be at least one question in the exam that, hey, you kind of know it quite well and you think you can do it. So start with that questions to build up your confidence so you feel calm during the examination. You tend to remember better when you're calm. If you start with something that you don't know too well, you tend to get nervous, and then you may have mental block, and which will affect your overall performance. However, do try to stick with the whole question. So do not do question 1A, 2B, 3C, and then mixing it up. It will be very confusing for the examiner and the marker, and do label very clearly which question you're attempting on both the answer booklet, the front and inside the answer booklet. So make it very clear that which questions that you're actually attempting, so there's no confusion for the marker. So for the don't, do not open or write in the answer book. You're not allowed to use a calculator. So if you see calculations, you can simply skip that and come back to do it later. And please do not arrive late and miss the reading time. I have had students ask me whether the reading time is compulsory. I think that is not a very good approach. Again, this reading time is designed to help you to read the questions, to plan ahead and get settled down. So do not arrive late. I will in fact suggest you to arrive at least 10 minutes before your examination start time, so at least you can go to the washroom, you can settle yourself down, you can make sure you're comfortable, make sure your table is not wobbly, so you're ready to start the examination. You trust me, you would do better when you're ready rather than rushing and maybe even getting lost along the way. So do plan ahead. We say that a lot of students do not understand what examiner is asking for. A lot of the time they do not understand the verb the examiner is using. It's surprising because this is like the most advanced stage of CIMA, and most people would have done some examination before coming to the strategic level, but yet a lot of students still do not understand the verb hierarchy. So for CIMA, we have 5 different levels, range from level 1, which is really basic knowledge, and level 2 comprehension, all the way to level 5, which we're asking for your evaluation skill. If you have started CIMA quite, at low level, at the foundation level, at the certificate level, you'll be studying level 1 and 2. So they're really straightforward, to test whether you know a theory or not. From the operational level onwards, you'll be in level 3. So it tests your ability of applications. And at this level, at the strategic level, everything will be in at least level 4 and level 5. So sometimes the problem is when the examiner use like a level 4 or level 5 verb, for example, discuss. What people are doing, they're simply describing or explaining or just even listing something. So yes, you will still get a little bit of marks, but you're not really answering the question being set by the examiner. To give you a bit more illustrations, for the word explain, can you explain a mobile phone? You may be tempted to tell me that my phone is I use an Android phone, I use a Samsung, or I use an iPhone, and my phone has a camera. What model is it? iPhone 5s or iPhone 6 or iPhone 6 Plus. Is this really explaining a mobile phone? Well, the answer is no, because explain is meant to state the meaning and purpose of something. So what I was doing just now was describing a mobile phone. I was telling you what is the made of my phone, what is the key features, but I'm just describing, which is level 1 and not explaining. In fact, what I should be doing, I should be saying, what is a mobile phone and why I have to use a mobile phone. So I may still want to say, yes, my phone is an iPhone and I can take pictures with it. But when I take pictures with my food and I can post up to my social media, Facebook or Instagram, and then I will get like from my friend. Okay, well, young people like to do it, but so I try to be cool, so I try to follow suit as well. Or my phone simply just for me to call my mom, to call my parents and say hi. So this is to saying what is a phone and why you use it, and simply stating the key features, which can be quite easy and a temptation for you to jump into do, is not actually answering the requirement if the examiner used the word explain, which is a level 2 verb. As I said, most of the verb you'll be exposed to will be in level 4 and 5 and above, level 4 and 5. So discuss is a very common level 4 verb, and again, usually it will cause a lot of confusions. Discuss actually means examine in details by argument. So to discuss something that you have to have an argument, which means it's at least 2 or more opposing viewpoints. So you either say the pros and cons for an issue, or you look at the same issue from different angles. One of the examples for that is, for example, if a company need to cut costs. So one of the suggestions is to let everyone, including the CEO or the worker, cut half the salary. Right? That's possible, and that would, I'm sure, would be able to cut costs. That's a very drastic move. From the company point of view, that's acceptable. I mean, that's okay, what you're trying to achieve is to cut costs. But I'm sure it's not acceptable, if you're the employee of the company, and even not so acceptable for the society, because they will expect the company to have, corporate social responsibility, and taking this very drastic move may not be in line, with what is the expectation from the society. So this is what I mean by looking at the same issue, cutting salary and cutting costs from the company. From different angles. So you need to look at the different perspective of different stakeholders. You can see there's a lot more high level, more complex. In reality, like, things are complex. We're living in a world with not just black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and you need to able to examine an issue from various angles. You may want to end in a conclusion, but again, that is not mandatory. It depends on the questions. So you should be discussing the usefulness of something, the advantages of something, the appropriateness and the impact of something. Level 5, evaluate and recommend are very common. So evaluate means appraise or assess the value of something. So think of evaluate as a high level of discuss. When you say evaluate something, usually that means like financial, which is quantitative, but you also want to evaluate in qualitative terms in non-financial. This is what CIMA is different from the other qualifications. We're not just about number crunching. Yes, we are accountants and we can do our number crunching, but at the end of the day, we want to add value to our business, to our organization, by bringing in other elements as well. So when you're looking at a project appraisal, you look at whether NPV, or you look at the financial return. But at the same time, you also need to look at marketing, branding is in line with the strategy. So there's a lot of non-financial stuff you need to be aware of as well. Recommend is propose a course of action. So again, it's one step forward from evaluate. You need to suggest solutions and action. And most important, with justification. So not just saying you should be doing that, but why. If you're working, when you go to your boss and tell your boss, hey boss, I want to do this project, you won't just stop there. You're in fact trying to bring a business case. You will explain to the boss, to him or her, why this is beneficial to him, to her, or to the company as well. And sometimes you will also need to be prepared to talk about some very simple implementation steps. How? Because your boss may ask you more. So again, don't just stop at saying what you should be doing. You'll get points for that, but to get the full marks, if examiner asks for recommend, you do have to always justify your answer, and maybe somehow need to give some simple So all of these verbs will be available, the meaning of it will be available at the back of your exam paper, so there's no need to remember by heart, but you should be fairly familiarized with what is the expectation from, when you see different verbs being used by examiner. We'll come back to this more when we walk through the questions, and it will become much more clearer to you with an example. So as I said, we suggest using the ASAP approach because the examiner has looked at two of the main reasons why students lose marks are by, number one, answering only part of the questions, which means that if the examiner asks you evaluate and recommend something, you only stop at the evaluation. So you've done your calculation, you've done your discussion. Hey, great, stop there. Yes, yes, you'll get some marks, but then you only get the marks which is related to the evaluations. So how about the recommendation? You're going to get 0 marks for that. So a lot of people, this is simply is not reading questions carefully enough. So do make sure you answer all parts of the questions. And secondly, some people like answer the questions that they hope for rather than the question being asked. Again, this is very common for students who have done a lot of practice, and then they see a keyword, they see, oh, Boston, the BCG matrix, and they, oh, that's something I've done last night. They quickly, there's a temptation to rush there and just try to reproduce what you've seen last night in the textbook, what you've written yourself, without actually looking at what exactly the examiner is asking for. That's a huge danger of doing that. So always go back to read the questions very, very carefully and make sure you're answering the question and not simply by just reproducing something you've learned before or getting confused with other mock question you've done. It's quite disappointing that after many sittings, we'll still see a lot of students missing marks by very, very careless questions reading. And it's not that I'm making it sound like a lot worse. When you see sometimes when students email you, you tell them all the information, they still come back with the same questions, then you know that people are not reading these days, so do not fall into the same trap here. So ASAP stands for analyze the question requirement, source your syllabus knowledge, analyze the scenario, and plan your answer. Yes, I know we love our acronym. Actually, there's no rocket science. It's a way to help you to structure your approach to long questions. Basically, you need to read your questions carefully. You have to know your syllabus content. Use the scenario as a base to help you to plan your answer, and then plan it properly according to the question requirement. So as I've promised, we'll be looking at 2 past exam questions. So these are real questions. Again, if you have not yet download or printed out or read the questions, I would suggest you to just simply pause here. Download the paper. So for piece 3, we're looking at March 2011 question 2. So that's March 2011 question 2. So if you have not yet downloaded, I would suggest you pause here and make sure you have that questions ready for you. So looking at these questions, it's a question in the section B. So that's one of the questions you do have a choice to choose from. As I said, the first thing you should be looking at is not the scenario, but first look at the question set. So you do realize that there's mark out of 25, and you have section A and section B, part A and part B, and each part has further 2 parts in it. So part A together 10 marks, and part B together is 15 marks. So based on 1.8 minutes per mark available, so this is how I would plan my time. So for 5 marks question, I only have 9 minutes to do. The timing here, of course, is not really rigid. I think as long as you can complete the whole question within 45 minutes, it's okay. But when you're practicing at home, if you just want to do one part of the questions, say just the part A, then you can give yourself 80 minutes altogether. Or if you just want to do part B, give yourself 27 minutes altogether to do. But ultimately, the whole thing should be complete within 45 minutes. As I said, usually if you go back to the scenario, you can see the top part of the scenario is more related to part A, and the second part after the subtitle, internal audit of injury reporting procedure, that's more related to the part B. Most of the scenario is going to structure in that way for easy reference. Very seldom that the examiner would actually mix the different parts up. So we are again trying to be nice to you and trying to make life not too confusing for students as well. So First A, analyze the question requirements. So we look at the part A. So there's two sub-questions, and both of them use the verb discuss here. So we talk about discuss, is mean examine by details in argument. So you need two sides of an argument. So that means that, you would need to talk about, I would suggest at least 2 points in favor of the statement made there, and 2 points against. You can see that these two questions are actually interrelated to each other. So you also have to be quite careful in your wording, that you're not simply just repeating what you said for one and just turning over for the other. It will be more clear when you see when we walk over the scenario and also see my answer planning. Because of 5 marks, I always look at the marks. That means, there's actually not a very lot of marks given in each sub-questions, and that means limited scope to develop your point. So there's no need to write a lot of points, for here. Do take note of the very strong words such as impossible, unacceptable being used in the questions. So usually, I think seeing this, it tells you the examiner is actually, what he's thinking or she's thinking is whether these statements are realistic. Moving on to part B, you got the verb analyze and recommend. So analyze means examine using a structured approach. So the structured approach means that first you highlight what are the key issues, explaining the ethical problems, and then showing how these are related to the fundamentals of the CIMA ethical code. So 80 marks, there's more marks than 5 marks here, and most of the marks will be weighted toward the discussing relevant ethical principle here. Recommend means propose clear, logical, and ethical action based on your answer in B1. Again, looking at the marks, it's 7 marks here, so that means a few actions are required. Some people just give one action point and feel that this will be sufficient. Unfortunately, being 7 marks, that's quite a lot, so you'll be at least expected to give 1 or 2, even up to 3. I would suggest 3 different recommendations. So which recommendation can range up to getting 2 marks or above. So this at least already, even before going into the scenario, I already have a rough idea what examiner is looking for, how I should spend my time, and what roughly I should be writing for each part of the questions. So we move on to S, which means source your syllabus knowledge. So this one, part A, is mainly testing the P3 syllabus. Part B, risk and control. And then part B, test the syllabus area C, review and audit and control system. So basically, you will find this in the post-exam guide, and just shows you how, when we say, how does the learning outcome will be examined in the examinations. So move on very quickly to the third character. A, again, is analyze the scenario. This question, we have a scenario for 1 page, which I think is quite typical for the strategic level. Some people do get afraid of the long scenario, especially if English is not your first language, but I want to reassure you the scenario are there to help you. There's a lot of information being given in the scenario, and they give you a lot of hints as well. So I would like you actually to spend some time to read the scenario, and make annotations, because you're allowed to do that in the examination. So you can pause the recording at this point and give it a quick read in light of what we've just talked about in the questions. Try to use a highlighter or pencil to highlight the key points or make notes along the way. If you want to, you may also want to write a short answer or an answer plan for your questions. If you want to, you can actually work through the whole questions, spend about 45 minutes on that, and come back and we can walk through these questions together. So feel free to pause the recording now and do your reading or your answer, and restart it when you're ready. Okay, let's look at the scenario. So as I said, it's quite a typical scenario, and it's not a very long one. I think it's quite easy to understand, in my opinion. It should, it's mainly talking about work safety, so it's not a concept that is too difficult to grasp. As I said, there's two very distinct, two different parts of the scenario. The top part is related to section A, and the second part is related to section B of the questions. So what I'm going to show you here is how we actually analyze the scenario. So the word in black are actually are the statement, exact wording used in the scenario, but the wordings in blue is actually what I'll be thinking when we go over the scenario. So you should get into this practice whenever you're reading. Your brain is you're starting to think already, and you're generating idea in light with what you see in the questions, and starting to get the information together. So first of all, what you should be noted is the council growth. It oversees a wide variety of occupations, so that included office work, or even in town, villages, or rural area. So even office work, maintenance, building work, all under the same council. So what you should be thinking is that actually it's very hard to ensure the consistency in risk management, because the risk someone would have in an office environment, in a city environment, is very different from someone would have in a building site or in a village setting. The scenario tells me that legally there's no precise definitions of what is an injury. The council do have guidelines, but again, this is just a guideline and has no legal enforcement. So what you should be thinking is compliance would be questionable, because it's not illegal. So you won't get to jail, or you won't get sued if you're not following the guidelines, because it's just a guidelines at the end of the day. It tells us that last year there's 150 injury, including 20 serious and 3 severe. So just based on my common sense, I don't have any data that I can comparing with, but if just based on my common sense, I would say it's quite high, because if I just divided 20 by 12, that means 1 to 2 serious case per month. Think about your colleagues, you're working next door to you, and each month there were 1 or 2 of them would get into serious injury. I think that's quite high. If the director of operation is happy because the number is no worse than previous year, I would definitely say that's complacent, because it's still quite a very high number. I think definitely this number should be improved on. At the same time, the chief executive believes that all injuries should be eliminated. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a nice idea, but of course you should be thinking, is it really realistic? Can we really do it? I mean, like, if you're making a statement, can that really be followed through? So that should relate to the first part of section A of your questions. Going to the second part, it talk about there are some people in the warehouse actually flitting around with their records. So yes, I mean, they're not breaking the law, but because as we said earlier, there's no legal enforcement of to report an injury, but clearly they are breaching the council guidelines. Okay. And obviously we can also be told that the mechanic are unwilling to report the allegations. So they know something is not right, but then I think they feel they're being intimidated. So we can say there's a very poor control system there, and the people are not willing to speak up even if they know if something has gone wrong. More worse, more concerning, I think, is what the head of internal audit say. He actually threatened to suspend the internal auditor and ask her to shut up. So basically saying that if you don't shut up, you'll be out of the door. This is very concerning, because it's not what internal audit is supposed to be there to look at the loopholes, the risks the company is facing. But even now, the internal auditor is asked to shut up. So I would say that's serious. There's no whistleblowing process, and I think here that could be an ethical dilemma here. So you can see that just by reading the scenario, you get quite a rich picture of what is the Growth Council and how it fits with the questions itself. So at this stage, that we'll move on to our last stage, which is P, plan your answer. So we just bring back to what we look at the questions and the scenario and structure our answer. So for part A, we talk about there's 2 statements you need to comment on, and I recommend for each statement you give 2 pros and 2 against minimum. So why we say why we say the operation director views that it's impossible to prevent all workplace injury. Well, we say yes. I mean yes, because simply the human errors lead to injuries, and when injuries is mentioned, like even the paper cuts can be counted as injury. It's really not much the council can do to prevent that. Even if you give training to people, people can still be careless and and injure themselves. And policy should always be realistic. You do not want to set some policy that cannot be achieved. But why we should be against of that statement? Well, first of all, clearly the director is being complacent. 150 last year is still a very high number, and injury can be reduced. By taking that viewpoint is also an evidence of the council, neglecting the health and safety issue of an employee and it's a clearly sign of negligence. Um, Training really should be given to ensure that all the employees are aware of the risk they're facing, and they will be careful enough. So on the flip side, like why we should support the chief executive view that it's unacceptable for the council to tolerate any workplace injury. Well, number one, yeah, I think there's a legal and moral duty, for the company to look after its employees. It also promotes a very strong culture of safety as a top priority by taking that statement. And the council do have a serious consequences if some of its employee is severe, being injured during work, and they could be sued by the employees. But why we should against such viewpoints? Well, first of all, it's unrealistic given the definitions. We talked about this earlier already. It's quite costly to investigate the reason for all injury as well. So if you're trying to take that view, you do need to understand why, you need to do your root cause analysis, understand why injury is happening, and it could be really time consuming. And sometimes it's just people simply being careless. And your supervisor and manager can be demoralized. I mean, think about if they spend the whole day going to work just to investigate why someone got a paper cut and not doing the work. I won't be in that position. So you can see, it's quite straightforward, and you get quite a lot from the answer already. You can really do a lot of these just simply by common sense, but of course including some of the knowledge you've learned from your syllabus and your textbook. Because of 5 marks, there's no need to write too much, so 2 points or up to 3 points each will be more than sufficient. I'm using bullet point here as my plan, but do remember during examination, you're not encouraged to use the bullet point. Examiner always feel that bullet point is not enough to elaborate your answer, so always try to write in small paragraph. I think there's only 2 scenarios that you should be using bullet point. Number one, if you're listing a lot of things out and there's no need for further elaboration. So for example, if you're listing out the key features of the phone, you can just use the bullet point because there's no need to further elaborate that. But otherwise, you should always write in small paragraph. The second scenario is you will be running out of time. You just got 10 minutes and you still got one whole big 25 questions to do. Unfortunately, you haven't done a very good job with your time management, but you're just trying to squeeze out whatever you can in that 10 minutes. So yes, you got no choice but to write bullet point. But I hope that if you have practiced these questions under exam conditions between now and your exam, I do hope that you won't get into such situations. So looking at part B, analyze the ethical dilemma faced by the internal auditor. So first, as we say, we need to highlight the key issue. So the key issue is that the council is unaware of the risk because of the people not reporting of injury, and the people are unwilling to change or speak out even if they know it's not correct. Of course, it's very clear that this is breaching the council guidelines of how they should report injury in the workplace. So then you need to explain why this is, explain the ethical problem in this case. Well, first of all, the warehouse is actually messing around with its safety record, so this is not right. You're not supposed to do that. And as I said earlier, the auditor is ordered not to report. So even if she finds out that something is going wrong, she has been asked by her boss not to report. So how the fundamental principle of CIMA ethical code apply here? Well, number one is the professional competence. The auditor, is supposed to, her job is supposed to find if there's any internal loopholes within the company. So she can be accused of negligence if she keeps quiet, so she's not actually doing her job, not being professional. Confidentiality can also be applied here because she should not be speaking to any third party. She is not supposed to leak the internal information, so she needs to be, keep the information confidential within the company. And it's also not very professional if she has to go over her boss because it's undermined her boss' credibility to go to someone else. So you can see, she's kind of stuck in this situation, so she knows what is right to do, but she's asked not to do the other things, and sometimes these two doesn't come aligned, and you can almost feel, this auditor being kind of pulled, from in different angles. So this is ethics issues. Just to reiterate, ethics doesn't mean it has to be illegal. A lot of time is in like this scenario here, it's a gray area. There's no right or wrong, but you kind of sense something is not going too well. Part B say is follow on from part P1 is recommended course of action that the internal auditor should take if she's unable to persuade the head of internal audit to draw these allegations of underreporting of injury to the attention of senior management of the council. So as we said, 7 marks, you're expected to give a few recommendations. So do not just say resign. That of course is one option, but that's a very drastic one, and you're not going to get a lot of marks just by mentioning that. So there should be different level of how serious the things is. So first of all, you can review the evidence. So just to check, okay, for the underreporting, why they're being underreported is because it's really trivial, maybe it's just a paper cut, and to check if there's anyone is at risk. If it's just paper cut and no one is at real risk, then yes, we can understand why there's a reason for doing that. So in that case, yes, we can follow the instructions. If you do find someone is at risk, then the auditor should try to resolve the issue and to persuade the manager, to implement the guidelines and understand why it has not been done before. Again, if it's also confirmed if staff is at risk and the manager is unwilling to cooperate and to adhere to the guidelines, the issue need to be raised at the senior level despite the suspension. As I said, it's more important for the council to be aware of the risk, and it's the job of the internal auditor as a professional herself to do the duty of her job. External reporting is only justified if the risk is so grave and no action is taken internally. So that means you have to go to your boss, you go to your boss, you go to the board of directors, still no one's care and won't take any action. Only at that point you should do external reporting, for example, to liaise with a local media, the newspaper, and at that point you should also resign. You want to draw a clear line between yourself and the council because you have done all you can already, but still they're not willing to take action, and you need to wash your hand clean. So the resign only should use as a last resort. So you can see how I develop my answer based on different situations. So you're not just looking at one options here. Always look for more than one solutions and try to justify why you're doing that solutions. So this is the P3 questions 2 from March 2011. Again, at this point you may want to pause and download the examiner answer and the post-exam guide being given to you. Just a bit of a warning or recommendation how to use this document. So the examiner answer is a very good way to, some people may see it as a model answer, but it's more complete than what you're being expected to write in the examination. They're written not under exam conditions and written for the purpose of education. So, for example, in the scenario that we see, you only need to mention 5 points. The answer may actually give you all 7 points available. There's no need to write all 7 points because as long as you mention 5 points well enough already, you get the full marks. So this is more useful, to understand the full pictures but not required to write the same amounts in the examinations, because if you try to do that, you will run out of time. Do pay attention of the style of writing there. This is what the examiner is looking for though. And you should read in conjunction the examiner answer with the PEG, the post-exam guide. So what is the post-exam guide is something examiner will issue after each exam performance on the performance of students globally. It also gives you a very clear marking scheme on how marks are being broken down. So the more you read this document, the more you understand how marks are usually being awarded in a CIMA examinations. I've heard someone to say, they feel the marking is very subjective, which I disagree, because as you can see from the marking scheme here, it's very clear what points you need to mention and how many marks you would get per point. Do look at the examiner comments as well on the post-exam guide. It gives you very good insight on what students in the past have done wrong, and you do not want to make the same mistake as well. Also tips, if you do see that examiner mention this answer is students do not understand this topic or is very poorly answered, it's very likely that a similar topic may be recurring in future examinations. The rationale from the examiner is that if you cannot understand a topic, cannot do a part of questions, then they will this will keep coming back to ensure you can understand it in the future. So do read these comments and use it as a guidelines for your study as well. I'm not asking you to question tips or cherry pick, but I think it's always good to have the information, the insight, so you can be more effective in your studying. So if you have not, so this will be now. If you want to, you can actually pause and go back and review the questions and compare to your own answer. You may want to ask your friend to mark your questions for you. There's nothing better than getting it marked. If you can get a tutor, even better. But otherwise, you can always mark yourself using the post-exam guide as a marking scheme. Be quite critical. This is the only way that you can see how you can improve. So the next question we'll look at is E3, which is from September 2011, question 1. We'll just only look at 1A because it's quite a long question. It's the compulsory questions in section 1. So again, you may want to pause at this point to download this question, which is September 2011, E3, question 1A. So this question is recommend with reason which of the three deals the third division board should offer to the independent retailer. And there's a note here say there are 12 marks available for calculations in requirement A. E3, which is different from E1 and E2, which are purely a narrative paper, would always have calculation, and usually there's up to around 15 marks being given for calculations. These calculations are not difficult. They're supposed to be very straightforward. They're not technically challenged. I think the challenge is to complete these questions within the very, very tight time frame in the examinations. So I'm going to walk through this question again with you. Do pause at in between to work through the answer. You probably will understand a bit better if you read the scenario and actually do the calculation yourself before hearing my walkthrough. Otherwise, you may feel a little bit lost. So do pause and do the calculations as you see fit. So again, we look at the question first. It's a recommend, which is level 5, is evaluate and give justified suggestions. You do have 3 options to choose from. You know that from the questions already, and you got 12 marks for the calculations. So in this case, but the question is marked out of 25. So that means that you have to look at both financial, which come from your calculations, and the non-financial element. This is a classic kind of a CIMA E3 kind of questions. You have to consider both the quantitative and the qualitative side. Again, you need to give reason from a perspective of the third division board because it has been stated quite clearly in the questions. So the knowledge that you need to use for this one is C1B in your syllabus is evaluate strategic options. So you need to evaluate the 3 potential strategies and provide both financial and non-financial evaluation to these options. So moving very quickly into the third character, analyze the scenario. Again, like if you want to pause here, you can, and do read the scenario. You can see this is the unseen material. So if you want, you can read the Preseen as well. But I can tell you for this part of the question, the question A, everything you know is actually in the unseen already. So again, this is just to echo my point earlier that you do not get too overly excited with the Preseen. It's there to set the scene. But what at the end of the day, what you need to work on at the exam day is in your unseen. So here, if you read the scenario for part A, you only need to read up to page 11, about middle of the page before the subtitle Corporate Social Responsibility. From that onwards, that is related to part B onwards of the question. So you may want to stop now and read the scenario on September 2011. E3 question 1A, so you read page 10 and the top part of page 11. So in a nutshell, you do have 3 options, exclusive, the halfway house, and the free and easy. It tells you have got £2 million that you can spend on. What you're trying to do is to increase the profitability through increasing market share. The GM, the general manager, has asked that the project need to be paid back within 1 year. However, the accountant, the management accountant, do feel that maybe 3 years is a more realistic time frame to look for payback in this project. Of course, when you do this, there's other consideration in terms of marketing, the branding as well. You need to take into consideration before you make your recommendations. So as we know that we need to do a calculations, and one of the things examiner is going to test you here is the ability to go through information. There's a lot of information in this scenario. It's a lot longer, and some of them are useful, some of them are not too useful. Some of the key points are put quite nicely in bullet point for you, but again, there's also information being hidden in the paragraph there. So what I'll be doing during my reading time, or when I plan for this question, I will actually draw up a table. I will make it very easy for myself to see all the critical data I need for the calculations. It just make it a bit easier. You don't want to go back and forth during examination time. It's going to waste a lot of your time. So so you can see my summary. So I look at the cost of the freezer, to check if it's like a one-off cost. I look at how much the retailer has to pay, the estimate take up, the marketing, the retailer per month, and additional sales. So these are all coming from the bullet point here. As we said, what we're trying to do is to increase the market share through, to increase profit through the market share. So you need to know what is the market share, which is 7%. This is not in one of the bullet points, it's hidden in the paragraph, on the third paragraph there, quite sneakily. So that's why I say, I would highlight or circle figures when I go through the scenario. You also have been given the total market size is £15 million in each month. So just hope that you have done your calculations already, and I hope you agree that it's not a very difficult calculation to do, but you do have to be quite careful. So with the information being given there, and you can comparing this to your actual answer, what you need to do is you need to look at the total cost for year one, and then to match that to the additional contributions margins, and then to see whether it is like a profit or cost at year one. You also need to look at the marketing cost as well in your cost calculations, which can be done quite easily in the calculation, the arrow that I show you here. The other thing that I think a lot of people tend to get wrong is they forget to annualize the contribution, as I've pointed out. So what you're being given is the additional sales per month. But if you need to compare to the cost for the whole year, you need to annualize this. So again, this is quite simple, but a lot of people do forget to do it in the examination. So it's important to do your sense check and ensure you get the right answer. At the end of the day, you also want to look at the market share, because it's what you've been told you want to do, and you can calculate the market share by the data being given. So this is the market share increase. There's a trick in here. You may feel that you've done the calculation already because you've done your 1 year payback. The trick in this question is what the management accountants say. Again, that's not very clear, and some people miss that out, but I can tell you because you're doing CIMA, which is Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, so whatever management accountants say is very important. And if the management accountant suggests a 3 years period is a more appropriate period, you should also do the 3 year payback options as well. And in fact, there's 12 marks, for the calculation, so you know that it's not going to be a very short, brief calculations. You do have to show that, a little bit more than that. So it's quite easy to calculate the year 2 and year 3, profit, and do the accumulated profit all together. Here we are assuming the marketing cost is the same for year 2 and year 3. Of course, in reality, this may not be the case, but for the purpose of the examination, it's possible to do that. We also haven't taken the consideration of the depreciations of the time value of the money, but again, you have been told in your question that that's not too important. So don't overcomplicate the calculation yourself, but do state what assumptions you are making. So to plan your answer, so you've done your hard work, you've done your number crunching, now you have to plan out your answer. So what I will actually do, again, I will draw another table, so to make sure it's very easy to see the outcome of your calculation, understand what you have done, and then you can refer to them very easily during your answer planning. So what I've done here is I look at the free option, exclusive, halfway house, and free and easy, and I've got different criteria, so I want to see whether we have matched the criteria. First is to check whether it's within budget, so that's the cost for the first year. You need to check whether it's a 1 year payback. You need to look at the profit for the 3 years and the market share increase. So you can see from this table, actually, it's only the halfway house that is able to satisfy all the criteria being listed here. So your recommendation should be based on the financial data. The halfway option should be accepted because it fulfills all the requirements: the budget, 1 year payback, and the market share increase. However, that is not the end of the story, because you also need to talk about the non-financial, the qualitative side. So you need to discuss the other considerations. Well, first of all, we look at the profit, the overall profit for the 3 years, and you can see the exclusive is a lot higher, and the market share increased to 15%. So currently we're 7, and if you use this exclusive option, that increase is like it's double, so you got to up to 15%. It's very significant. Think about your local supermarket, your grocery. If suddenly, it's double amount of the shop in your area, and you can see how significant this is to this kind of FMCG company. So this is very, very important. Yes, we can discuss, the exclusive has actually exceeds the £2 million budget, but at the same time, that sometimes that happens, and there are ways that company can raise finance, maybe by issuing share or by borrowing money. So it's not a no, and as a management accountant, we do hope that you can add value to your company by sometimes just pushing the boundary and say, hey boss, look, I know we only have £2 million to spend, but this is a really good deal, and this is for long-term development. For the company, is a much better options. Maybe we should relook at this budget again. Just try to push the boundary. This is where you're adding value to your company. You're not a machine. You're not just there to do number crunching. We need to look at the marketing and the branding, of course, with the increase in market share. That is huge marketing and branding benefit there. Also, you talk about the assumption we talked about earlier. So we assume the sales cost and the sales is the same for the year 2 and 3. So based on what we talk about here, yes, based on the financial, maybe only halfway house. So based on the non-financial benefits, exclusive can bring, and of course the financial, the extra profit as well, exclusive option should be taken up here in this scenario. So as I said, this is quite a very classic way that CIMA look at how we use the financial data. As we always say, CIMA is the bridge between financial data and business decisions. So we do the number crunching, but we don't just stop there. We actually add value and bring in our expertise as well. So again, you may want to stop here and download your exam answer and your post-exam guide here. Whenever you do calculations, do show all your working, make it very clear, because even if you have getting, some of your answer is incorrect, if you show the right working, you will still get a lot of the marks. You can see that from the marking guide, from the post-exam guide, that there's actually marks being, reaching certain point in the calculation. So it's very important you show your calculation neatly and correctly. So even if you have missed 1 point, you will try to get most of the marks out of that. And what happens if you get the wrong calculations? Then stick with whatever it tells you. Stick with the answer, but of course do a sense check and ask yourself, if this is making sense or not. So coming to the end of the presentation now, we talk about please the marker. So this is how we present the answer in a way that is easy for the marker to give you marks. So for example, this question say explain the advantage and disadvantage of 2 alternatives proposed and clearly indicating which one you recommend the company to accept. So first of all, when I read the question, I will underline the keywords and the word in here. And then this is how I will actually lay out my answers. So I will use subheading. I make it very clear that I talk about both the advantage and disadvantage for each option, and then what recommendations I'm to make. You can see the clarity that immediately you know that I have satisfied all the requirements being given in here. So do you look at the examiner answer? They're a very good example of what they're looking for in the answer. You can see that they it's always spacing out. They use small paragraph. They use table. They use subtitle, underline. So use this in your answer as well, and try to avoid, as I said, avoid bullet point and very long paragraph. It's very, very difficult for examiner to give you marks if all your information is being hidden in one big long article paragraph. So again, some more tips to how to please the marker. Your handwriting would not be penalized, but they should be readable. Anything cannot be read would not be marked. Use small paragraph in subheadings. Concentrate on the answer. There's no need to rewrite the questions. Again, I have sometimes have students from university asking me, oh, do I need to write the introduction, the content, the conclusion? It's okay. You can go right into the answer. There's no need to stick to the formality. Do not mix up different parts of the answer. So if you're doing question 1, stick to the whole question 1. Do not do 1A, 2B, 3C. Space your work out. Again, if you have run out of time for particular questions, leave a lot of space back there, and you can come back and write more if you do have time later. Label your working, especially for calculations. When you make a mistake, just cross out with a ruler. There's no need to use the correcting fluid. It's just going to waste time to wait for it to dry, and sometimes you forget to put in what you're supposed to write there. And finally, do not write notes to the marker. I do have seen students writing, "Dear examiner, please pass me." It's very cute, but it's not going to help you to pass your examination, and it's professional examination, so let's keep it professional. So there's a lot of free study resources on the CIMA global website. Again, you can click on the link. I would recommend you to download to practice as many past exam questions as possible under time condition between now to your exam day. There's a lot of useful articles. There's a few more articles on ASAP approach using other past questions, so use that as a reference as well. I would particularly bring your attention to the self-study guide. So this is your one-stop shop. It's a 15 weeks, so we don't have that luxury of 15 weeks to work full slowly and hope you have done most of your work. But we give you the study guidance, technical article related to these learning outcome, and past exam questions related to learning outcome as well. So if you want to be very focused in your exam practice, this is one good resources to use. So finally, what happened, when it comes to the 2015 syllabus, ultimately you will still have the same paper to the same subjects to do. Anything you have passed by the end of this year will have credits carried into the 2015. So, for example, if you have passed P3 and F3 already, there's no need to sit these exams again. So all you need to do is to resit E3 and then progress to the final strategic level case study. The E3, P3, and F3, they will have some slight syllabus change, and there will be tests with objective test questions under the 2015 syllabus. Good news is that they're on-demand, computer-based examination available all year round at the Pearson VUE Center. They're 90-minute examinations, so they're no longer 3 hours, and you're no longer required to sit all 3 subjects together in the first sitting, so you can actually take exam one by one. However, you still have to pass all 3 subjects before progressing to strategic level.